Friends, today's NRI Summer program from Los Angeles brought to you commercial free by listeners like you. Your generous donations make possible for us to stay commercial free, and today's show is pre-recorded. If you have a question for the guest, please send an email to nrisummer@gmail.com. We will follow. Friends, today's NRI Summer program from Los Angeles brought to you commercial free by listeners like you. Your generous donations make possible for us to stay commercial free, and today's show is pre-recorded. If you have a question for the guest, please send an email to nrisummer@gmail.com. We will follow up with the guest and find the answer for you. Thank you for your support.
Friends, welcome to another Samay, and this is your host, Vamsi Ala. Today we are doing a show on climate change and what are the things that we can do. And we have a expert panel assembled today. And first of all, we have Pradeep Karuturi, who is a social worker in India, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana region. We have Charulata, who is a IAS cadre in the Karnataka region. And we have Radwan Sabri from Cairo, Egypt, and Laura Schetter, who is an educator in Ohio, USA. We'll start off with Pradeep. Like I said, he's a social worker. He's a techie who gave up his career and joined the social sector. He works in the fields of education sector and climate catastrophes. Hello, Pradeep. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I was asking the introductory bit, and you said you'd like to work in a field that would impact people, right? Is this the international expedition that you were part of? Is this part of that you wanted to impact lives? So how did you get this idea of joining the International Antarctic Expedition? Can you explain briefly about that, please?
Yeah, last year at this time I was in Nepal, I was in Nepal at this time after that earthquake for the relief operation. And in the process I've been to Hudhud cyclone and other Uttarakhand floods also. So I've realized that climate change is the most significant thing that can hamper any economy. No matter what you do for poverty, upliftment, and all those things, if you don't address this climate change issue, it can hamper anything. So I saw this as one of the things that I can address to impact people. So I saw this International Antarctic Expedition is one of the platforms for me to work on this thing. So that's the way.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry for not doing this, but I haven't explained to our audience what International Antarctic Expedition, but who better than you who has been there? Well, what is the International Antarctic Expedition? Can you explain to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So this International Antarctic Expedition was started by 2041 Foundation, founded by Sir Robert Swan, who is an environmentalist and the first person to walk on both poles. So this expedition is about this expedition mission is to preserve Antarctica, the last great wilderness on Earth. So Rob Swan is bringing young leaders from across the globe every year for the past 13 years, inspiring them and transforming them into renewable energy champions. So we believe that if the world goes completely renewable, if you don't depend on fossil fuels, then no one comes to Antarctica for fossil fuels. So like that we can preserve Antarctica. That is what this 2041 is trying to do.
Right. You use the word 2041 quite a few times. What is 2041 and what is the goal of 2041 expedition again, please? Is that a year 2041 that is coming in 15 years or 25 years?
Yeah, 25 years from now, 2041 comes. So 2041 is a very important year for Antarctica and all of us, because Antarctica belongs to every single one of us on planet. So in 1991, the protocol to Antarctic Treaty has happened. So from there, they stopped the mining activities or any human-made activity in Antarctica. So after 50 years, they can amend the treaty. So 2041 is one of the crucial years. So all of us, if we can actually work together to make sure that they will leave that great continent alone like a natural reserve without using for our human greed. So that is the significance of 2041.
Right. So let's talk about this expedition itself. You've been part of this Antarctic expedition, but how do one get to be part of it? What is the selection criteria? How do you get selected to be part of the expedition?
This Antarctic expedition gets selected first. You need to first feel that whether you really want to do or you really want to do something for climate change or environment. Then you need to apply for the expedition through their website. You need to send your resume and all those things. There will be some questionnaire, and you need to answer them what you're going to do with this experience, how you're going to work for this climate change and all those things. So basically, the selection procedure concentrates mostly on young leaders and like how they're going to use this experience and all those stuff they consider. And like they make sure that majority of the countries are participating. So far 75 nations has participated in this expedition, almost 75. And this year alone there are 30 countries representing all the 5 major continents has participated.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like almost like Olympics at this point if 130 countries participated. That must be an interesting event where different nations come together and participate in this. So what was? I mean, how do you get to Antarctic? I mean, as a layman, if I were to know, how do you get to Antarctica, and what were some of the challenges that you faced or your team faced going there?
Yeah, Antarctica continent is very beautiful and but going there is not that easy task. We need to go by a cruise, through we need to enter one of the world's roughest sea, Drake Passage. So for a 38 hours journey. So that's no easy thing. So the ship actually, it's you often fall seasick. Most of my colleagues in the expedition felt seasick because of the Drake Passage. The movement of the ship, it's not very even, it's very uneven because of the high altitude tides you get on the Drake Passage. So you often feel seasick. So first you need to start from Ushuaia, the southernmost city of this world. From there you need to go to Beagle Channel, from there Drake Passage. It takes almost 2 days to get into the tip of Antarctica.
Okay. I mean, did you guys get any training prior to taking that sea journey where you said you get seasick, or you just go on it?
Yeah. Actually, Antarctica is one of the windiest continent as well. So it's we need to walk on ice. So they give us some basic training, and there are some criteria that if you have such kind of health issues, you can't go to that place. That place is not for everyone. So they give us some precautionary measures that we need to take before we land and all those stuff. When we are in the cruise also, they gave us a lot of precautionary. There are a lot of sections about safety and all those things. Okay.
So you take this journey that is really, really tough and long, time consuming. What do you do when you get there, right? I mean, you take the ship and you reach there. What do you do, and what are some of the activities that you try to?
As you know, 2041 is focused on preserving Antarctica. So the entire expedition is keeping this goal at center. All the entire expedition will be running. So what we do is that there will be a lot of brainstorming sessions. So along with Rob's run, there will be so many climate change leaders. We'll be talking about different aspects, and they're not going to just talk. We are going to actually form a small teams, and we're going to brainstorm. We're going to come up with different solutions. How we going to, when we go back to our own countries, how we're going to work, not just in our own countries, how we can work in our communities and across the globe as well. So that is one of the things that we do. And other things is we form a strong network across people. If you're an educator, you try to form a strong network across education. If your field is water, conservation, you can find people over there. So another thing is we do solar panel testing. So some of the people this time we did solar panel testing along with NASA scientists, and we did some solar panel testing to measure what is the solar isolation in Antarctica and as well. So the amazing part is the people you see here is entire globe being there, not just the countries. You'll see people from the government, you'll see scientists, you'll see environmentalists, you'll see educators, you'll see students. So where do you want? So everyone you'll see. So you'll hardly find time to sleep. So every time you'll find some new perspective and how you can actually work together, all those things. We'll have a lot of brainstorming and like new solutions and all those stuff. Yeah.
Right. Right. I mean, when we think about Antarctica, it feels like pristine, snow-clad mountains or glaciers. Is that still the same, or is it not? What's your perception of? You've been there personally. How do you explain it?
Yeah, Antarctica is very beautiful. Like as I said, like we can't describe the continent in words. The sunrise that you see, the sunset you see it's like an oil painting. But again, like Antarctica, like it showed me the truth as well personally. Like nature is very powerful because you don't know how Antarctica behaves tomorrow. Like there might be sun today, tomorrow you can't expect sun. So we face such kind of situations. Like when we are in Brown Bluff, we had to rush back to our ship, to our cruise because of the heavy wind and all those things. So the continent actually speaks a lot. Nature is very powerful than us. In fact, when we are at Neko Harbor, we saw huge ice chunk falling down. It's like a mining blast, which you can hear from 10 miles from the place where it happened. So it's like a clear cut, that truth that climate change is actually happening, and you need to do something for that great continent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So I'll move on to Radwan. Radwan is from Cairo. He was born and raised in Cairo, and he is currently a environmental science and hydrology student in Friedberg, Germany. He lived for 3 years in Bangkok, Thailand, and he aspires to change the lives of people in Egypt and become active in global movement towards building a sustainable society. Thank you for joining, Radwan.
Thank you.
Are you there on the call?
Yes, I am.
You're most welcome. I mean, when the goal of International Antarctic Expedition is to inspire the next generation of leaders, and nobody is more fit for you. I mean, you're just an 18-year-old guy. It's pretty much a teenage. At that age, I can't even imagine myself thinking I would be thinking of these sustainable societies and climate change. What led you to this path, if you can explain?
I've been asked that question a lot, and I believe there isn't one definite answer to it, because to me it's just so obvious that these things matter, because we're talking about the very resources that give us life, that sustain life and allow us to exist. And growing up in Cairo, Egypt, which is one of the developing areas in the world, I've seen how important it is to care about this stuff, because it affects millions of lives. The connection between the environment and the way we live day by day is so significant, we just can't ignore it. And as part of the educated part of Egypt, it's our responsibility to make change. It's our responsibility, the people that have the privilege of being educated and being able to think for themselves, we have the responsibility to take action in our own country.
Right. I mean, Egypt is a big nation. It's a very critical nation in Asia. It's a different country, different culture. But there are different challenges when it comes to climate change. When it comes to Egypt, right? Some challenges are the same, some are different. Can you throw some lights on issues that are unique to Egypt, that you see it as a citizen of Egypt?
Well, just to give you an overview of Egypt, Egypt has a very unique geographical position in Northeast Africa. It's at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. It's connected to the Mediterranean and Red Sea. It's connected to the Sub-Saharan desert, and it's also connected to the Nile Valley, which is the longest river on Earth.
Yes.
And as a developing country, we face most of the challenges that other countries face. For example, at the top are poverty and education challenges, then governance challenges and environmental challenges. But something unique to Egypt is, for example, that 95% of the whole population lives along the Nile, and it occupies less than 5% of Egypt's territory, because we have a country that's divided in the middle by the Nile, and to the right and left side are only deserts. It can't even sustain life. So it's a very fragile situation, because we have so many people living in such dense population and the resources in these places aren't enough to sustain such a huge amount. So, because of that, Egypt is probably one of the countries that is being threatened the most by, for example, the global water crisis. In a couple of years, we will have water shortage, and we will face a lot of problems because the way we live today is simply not sustainable. It cannot go on, and the people are starting to realize if we do not make that shift now, a lot of people will suffer.
Right. I mean, in any of these crises, there are two things, right? One is how do we bring about awareness in the people? That's a challenge. And then there's the political. Let's talk about the people, right? I mean, you talked about poverty and people living closely to River Nile. What are some of the challenges that are unique to Egypt to getting people involved, with, either be it for poverty, be it for cultural reasons? What are some of the challenges that you see them?
I personally believe the biggest issue in Egypt is education, because you have more than 75% of the whole population is illiterate. From people from the age of 15 and older, people are illiterate. They can't read or write. So you have a huge part of the entire population that can't even properly think. They can't be in a place to take decisions that will affect the rest of the country. And unemployment. You have an unemployment rate of almost 50%, and the majority of the people unemployed in Egypt are young people. 2/3 of the entire population are under the age of 29, and most of them are unemployed. So you have the whole force that's supposed to drive the country forward. They aren't even doing anything. People are not engaged. People are being passive about things going on. But before the expedition, I used to think about the whole situation in Egypt as a hopeless one, because I saw so many problems and so much negativity. But after the expedition, I started to see things differently, because all of this negativity is just potential for more positivity. It's potential for change to a better future. So at the same time, you have so many problems, but that allows you to fix so many things. You have so many fields in Egypt that can be changed and that should be changed. You have such a wide field that can be changed. So after the expedition, I've started becoming a lot more hopeful and optimistic, and I plan on spreading the word, because nothing is more contagious than positivity. I also delivered a talk at the American University in Cairo, and the amount of people that were engaged after the talk, people want to make a difference. People want to hear a positive story, and they want to believe that they can make a difference, but they need to be inspired. And that was the role of the International Antarctic Expedition for me. It inspired me to become a force of change in my own country and to believe that the world can change.
Right. And the last but not the least, again, tackling these issues involves political willingness. Right. And as a follower of international events, Egypt of late has its political instability, if I want to say that. Given that scenario, where do you see the political body of your nation addressing this issue? Do you see them addressing? Are they aware of this issue? Are they taking it seriously? Do you have any hope in that angle?
Unfortunately, the whole environmental situation doesn't play a big role in the media or in general. It doesn't have its space in society, because the political movement and the political activity is the major concern in Egypt, because you have so many shifts and so many changes every single year. And with the whole revolution in 2011, people had a lot of hope that Egypt would change, and then it all came crashing down, and now the military is occupying the country. So it's you can't say that it's stopping us from bringing the issue to light, because people are more concerned with things that affect them the most, which are the politics. Because people care about the things that affect them directly, and because the environmental situation isn't really relevant in the country, people don't understand how much it affects them, although the whole environmental situation is the leading cause to most of the problems in Egypt.
Right. I understand what you're saying. But I mean, like I said, you're 18-year-old, and talking to you gives me hope, right? I mean, you're the next generation of bringing about change, and you are hopeful, and I think the world is in good hands.
Friends, NRI Samay is a non-profit independent alternate media from Los Angeles, USA, which brings positive stories from grassroots activists from all corners of India and across the world. NRI Summit does not rely on corporate funding, and our shows are commercial free. We only rely on your donations. Corporate funded media is driven by the TRP rating, and profits are blurring the distinction between news and entertainment. Why do our news channels talk so much about cricket, movies, accidents, popular figures' personal lives, babies of heroines, gossips, etc., while they should be covering the struggles of people, inequality in our society, rural issues, and border security issues? Why did our media raise some corruption crusaders to the sky on one day and shut them off completely when graft charges were raised on those corporate sponsors? Media relies so much on the corporate funding and government blessings that they cannot report independently. NRSMA is different. We don't accept funds from any corporations, and hence our shows are commercial free. We completely rely on donations from you. Please consider donating to NRI Samay, and please go to nrisamay.com and donate generously. This is the only way together that we can continue NRI Samay. All donations are kept transparent on nrisamay.com. And if you have any questions, please write to nrisamay@gmail.com.
Moving to the Karnataka IAS officer, we have on board Charulata. She graduated BA Economics from St. Stephen's Delhi University, and she is a 2012 graduate of the IAS officer batch. She is currently the Jilla Panchayat CEO of Kodagu district in Karnataka. Welcome, Charulata. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Vamsi?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time today. I quote this from the Arctic expedition goals. The purpose for this Antarctic expedition is to engage and inspire the next generation of leaders to take responsibility to build resilient communities, and in doing so preserve Antarctica. But the topic I want to bring for you is building resilient communities as a Zilla Panchayat in Kodagu district. What are some of the things that you see impacting your local district in Karnataka? Can you start off with that, please?
Yeah, I will talk about the general issues of climate change that we are facing not just in my district but across the country. Some of that including the high temperatures, the highest ever that we are facing in the month of April. The deficit rainfall that we have been having for the past 2 years, the crop failures and the low yields and shortage of water.
Right.
For instance, everyone would be knowing about the shortage of water we had in Latur and the water riots. And these are some of the common issues that all the communities face. But I think it is more important to talk about what is happening in our community that is adding to and contributing to environmental degradation, pollution and climate change, because I would not talk about climate change as global warming, because that is too high a level to talk about when you're talking about the community. At the level of the community, we talk about pollution.
Right.
We talk about issues such as deforestation. We talk about mismanagement in waste disposal, because all of this in some way or the other would go on to degrade our environment with the magnifying effects later on that is what we now today call climate change. So, for instance, in Kodagu district, given that it has a very high coverage of forests, and for the past 10 to 15 years, we have seen a lot of loss of forest cover, and the origin of the Kaveri is in the district of Kodagu, and Kaveri is one of the most important rivers in the south of India, and Bangalore, one of the biggest cities in India, gets its water from the Kaveri.
Okay.
There is also pollution of the river, and which obviously with the pollution of the river, with the destruction of the watershed of the river, it finally has an impact at the tail end.
Right. Right. When it comes to local community, like I agree that we can't talk words like global warming and Amazon forest deforestation, etc., that would impact somebody in Kodagu. Having said that, it impacts local communities, like you said, high temperatures, low crop yields, or even droughts, right? How do you educate the general population about this? Then what are some of the things that you are undertaking to educate the general population, and what has its impact been?
I think one of the first focus groups that one should always aim at educating would be the children, because it is the children who would then go back home and educate their parents, their siblings, their families, and their peer group. And it was also very evident in the International Antarctic Expedition, where we had a lot of young people joining us, and we have Radwan here with us. So one of the first things would always be to talk to the children, because they are the ones who are most open to new ideas, who are very enthusiastic and very positive people. The second is obviously in a country like India, where we have so much diversity in languages, in linguistics, in cultures, in the number of people. So within my district itself, if I have to reach out to people, and not only in my district, in any other part of India, if I have to reach out, it's very important to reach out to the people in their style of living, in their language and in their dialect, and to make them understand how their lives are being affected immediately, and not by using words like climate change, because they may not be able to process. And I think climate change is a better word than global warming, because it's not that we are heating up everywhere, it's just that the natural temperatures are now varying beyond the normal. And I think the third thing in terms of educating the public is the community at every level is very, very important. And we have to identify community leaders who have a good hold over the people, who are able to talk to the people and convince them, and to then work through the community leaders to actually reach out to the larger public. Okay.
And in any of these things, I see, without political support, you can't do much. And when it comes to political support or administration support, there is the local city level, there is a state level, and there is a national level support. Can you throw some light on the support you're getting or lack thereof? Sometimes there is not even that, right? That you are seeing at your local city level, and then the state of Karnataka level, and then the Indian national level. Can you throw some light on the support you're getting, or if you're not getting anything in addressing this climate?
Yes. So firstly, I would like to say that whatever views I'm expressing here are my personal views. And if we were to talk about the government at any level, at the local, state, or the national level, I think it has become very popular and fashionable in India to criticize the government, because a lot of the good work that the government is doing does not come to the knowledge of the public per se. So I would not say that the government is not supporting such initiatives, because if I were to list out a couple of activities that the government is focusing on, for instance, say if you were to see the Delhi, the city of New Delhi and some of the other cities, we have been going in for adoption of CNG, and across the country we have been trying to improve fuel norms and improve the pollution norms so that vehicular pollution is reduced and we have better quality of air. We also have the government going in for LPG rather than burning wood and fossil fuels. We are now going in to subsidize LPG for people across income classes, and that again in its small way has an effect on the larger environment. And another very, very important program in the government of India as of today is the Swachh Bharat Mission, where we are going in for construction of individual toilets in households that do not have toilets till date. And we are going in for an open defecation-free villages where the government is giving the money for the construction. And all of this may not sound that it is related to climate change, but it very much is, because it addresses the issue of environmental degradation. And by following these policies, by putting in place these smaller initiatives which are more impactful for the community, not only does it improve the environment, but we are also able to go in for the development of the people. And secondly, I would like to say is that the government cannot change anything alone.
Right.
Any initiative of the government requires the wholehearted support and involvement of the people and of the community, because unless and until the people are not coming forward, they are not accepting the programs and policies, the implementation part of it becomes difficult. And India is it is a developing country. It has a lot of complex challenges. So given the amount of limited resources, I think a lot of individuals and the government at their level are doing their best in trying to deliver. But of course, we are not able to shoot on all fronts. But definitely there is a lot going on that I'm optimistic would improve the environmental status of our localities and communities.
Sounds good. I think I agree. That the reason I brought this up is if the government is doing, people need to be aware that the government is doing, and then not just say criticize, oh, they're not doing, so we don't have to do anything. Right? If the government is doing something, they need to be brought to light and say, this is things that the government is doing, and there is something that you as individuals also, and as a society, we need to do our own contribution, right? And I thank you for bringing that out. I appreciate it. I think the government is spending its efforts in addressing this issue. And I think you brought about a valid point in educating the kids, and that leads me to Laura, who's an educator. Laura, like Charulata mentioned, the best part is to bring about changes to educate the kids, right? And here you are the educator. You are in Ohio, Holland, Ohio, USA, and you are an environmental studies coordinator at Wildwood Environmental Academy. And
yes,
this is a K-12 school focused on environmental stewardship, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and you're trying to connect people to the earth and you founded the project called H2U Project, a water education project that inspires people to care and conserve water. And these are two important things. So educating the kids and water. I'll get to the water part, but let's talk about educating the kids. What are some of the things that you can educate children, and why are children important in this issue?
I think it's very important to be sure that we are educating our children about the environment. When children are very young, they are innately curious, and
right.
they love to play outside, and they're curious about the world around them, and they learn about the environment around them by having the free time to play outside and to connect to the environment. And so
right.
once they have that opportunity to play outside and connect to the environment, then they grow to love the environment. And so that initial connection to the environment is so important for our children. And like I said, they're naturally curious about the world around them, but they're not born with the knowledge of environmental issues. And so
right.
it is, I believe, my responsibility as an educator to ensure that those connections are made to the environment first. And once
right.
those connections are made, then to start educating the children on environmental issues. And they are the future of this planet. So it is absolutely essential to ensure that they are connected, and then once they grow to love the environment, to start to gain an understanding of what the environmental issues are. So again, as educators and as adults and parents, we must empower children to let them know that they do matter, their choices make a difference, and to take the action to give kids that positive message, I think will help children to understand that their role in the environment is absolutely essential.
Right. It's that's a good point. But I mean, when we think about children, we see them as these carefree kids, just playing around, goofing around, and then they're not born with this environmental awareness, right? But when you bring that issue, be making them aware of the environment, and are they conscious of these issues that you're talking about? Do they get the part? What's your experience when you talk about environmental issues to kids? Are they grasping the issues, and how are they taking all of that you're talking about?
Well, again, when children are very young, they're innocent, and
Right.
they're a blank slate, having no reason to be negative until they've learned some kind of negative message, particularly about the environment, or they have some kind of learned experience that makes them fear something in the environment. And so I think it's really important to give them that positive message. And no one is, Robert Swan on our expedition talked a lot about how no one is really inspired by negativity. And so in my role as an educator and my coworkers at Wildwood Environmental Academy, we work very hard to deliver a positive message to the kids. And when we take that approach, they are absolutely receptive to learning more about the environment and to wanting to do good things for the earth, and they want to make a difference, and they do care. And I believe that they do care and they are receptive because we have taken the right approach. A doom and gloom approach, talking about how this world is just going to fall apart, then why bother doing something to make it better? But when the kids are empowered to make a difference, they absolutely are receptive.
Right. You have been to the Antarctic expedition, right? Can you share some experiences that you have had while in the expedition?
Yes, absolutely. So I was first invited by Robert Swan on the International Antarctic Expedition when I met him to talk about my H2U project. And I spent a lot of time on the International Antarctic Expedition working on my H2U project. And the H2U project is it features an interactive website with a map of the world, and there are now nearly 100 markers on this map where you click on a marker and it tells a water story about how a particular location in the world sources its water, what their environmental issues are, and what people in that area are doing to make a positive impact on our world. We've already had 2 people on this call mention water issues. And so I was very focused on water while we were in Antarctica. I was very mindful of the fact that 90% of the entire planet's ice is in Antarctica. And that holds 70% of our planet's fresh water. That means that only 30% of the world's fresh water is outside of Antarctica. So we ought to use that water very wisely. And so interacting with the ice in Antarctica just really started to give me even more of a global perspective of how the rest of the planet is connected to Antarctica. What we do in our corners of the world affects the bottom of the planet. And so throughout my time in the expedition, I had the opportunity to network with people from 30 countries on this H2U project. And we shared our stories about what water is like where we live. And I think that we all came together thinking that we are not hundreds of nations. We are one nation that shares this important resource of water. And so I tested water. I had a permit from the EPA to test water. And so I was sampling water in Antarctica with a biologist from France named Fabrice Genevois. And we're going to share our findings on the GLOBE program's website. So that had a lot of my experience on the International Antarctic Expedition was very much then focus on water and appreciating it and building this project.
Okay, so you've been to the Antarctica and as part of the expedition, and you have this great experiences. How are you taking that experience and using that in your classroom as an educator?
Yes, it was very exciting for me to go on this expedition because I wasn't going just for myself to have a good time. I work with nearly 350 students at my school in grades K through 12, and every single student knew that I was going. And many of the classrooms actually followed the blog of the expedition while we were traveling. So they were instantly hooked and curious before I even returned and learning about this fantastic, beautiful environment. And so when I returned, the kids were very excited to see me and asking me all sorts of questions about Antarctica and about my experience. And so with Earth Day coming up next Friday, it's a perfect time for me to start giving presentations. And so for the older students, I will present on what my story was, on how I saw Antarctica. And then from the positive messages that I give, I'll teach about how they are connected to this environment and empower them to know that they do matter and that they do make a difference, and what we do in my town of Toledo, Ohio impacts this beautiful place that they will have seen pictures of from my story. So that's with the older students, and we can start to talk about some of the more complicated environmental issues like climate change. And then I also, for the younger children, they are really curious about penguins. They're very excited about penguins. So I actually have a plan to wear a penguin costume and visit the kindergarten classroom and show them the pictures of penguins that I took and talk to them about this. And this kindergarten class followed the blog of the expedition, so they are already knowledgeable about this place. So it's exciting to be a role model to the students and show them that I'm an adult and I'm very curious about the world around me. I'm very curious about Antarctica, enough to go for a swim in the Southern Ocean, in fact. So hopefully if I can do that, I become an example to the kids that they too can be outside and learning about the world around them. And then finally, the most exciting thing to me about how I will apply the International Antarctic Expedition in my classroom is through my H2U project. So the H2U project, which is h2uproject.com, can be used by educators and travelers all over the world to share and compare our water stories. And while I was on the expedition, I was collecting video interviews from people all over the world, and I'm really excited to share those water stories with my students, and ultimately when they're on the website with students all over the world, and again helping them make the connection that our water in Toledo, Ohio, which is connected to the Great Lakes and eventually flows out to the ocean, guess what? That's also connected to Antarctica. So in the end, our local environmental issues connect to global environmental issues, including Antarctica.
Right. And I think this is the last question, and then I'll go back to the rest of the panel with the question each. So what is your advice to other teachers who want to bring issues like water and environment changes into their classrooms? How do they go about if you were to advise them?
I believe that teachers and parents, adults, all have a responsibility to teach children about the world and to teach them about the environment. And I would encourage teachers from any subject to teach about the environment. So the environment is not just science. It's social studies because we're talking about places near and far. It's math because you can collect data about the world around you and calculate measurements. You can read and write about the environment. So thinking about environmental education as a cross-curricular, as an interdisciplinary method is very important. And then you're reaching out to the fact that children learn in a variety of ways. Some are better at one subject than another. I also think it's very, very important to empower students to know that they do matter, they do make a difference, that their choices impact their local and global environment. So giving them, again, that positive message to do things that are positive for the environment, so that if every teacher on the entire planet was delivering the message to take care of their own backyard, and every corner of the world was making a difference for their local water and to reduce air pollution, then that would add up to the entire planet. So getting kids to see that their choices might seem like it's just one household, but it's one of many households that adds up to the global picture.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Charulata, this question is for you. In our conversation earlier, you talked about what the government is doing, but it's also the responsibility of individuals to take part, right? What, in your opinion, is something that individuals can do to do their part, right? If they don't have to go grant scheming about climate change, etc., but in their own way, what are some of those things or small things that they can do, in your opinion?
One of the first things that individuals can do is probably educate themselves and make themselves more aware about these issues in their own communities and at the national and the global scale, and also use their knowledge in spreading awareness in their own peer groups where they work, where they study, and other such places. The other thing individuals can do is where they optimize the use of resources and energy at the level of their own households and encourage others to do so. Thirdly, it is not something that we have talked about in detail, but in the expedition we did have some very impactful talks about turning vegetarian and reducing the consumption of meat, because a lot of water, food and other resources goes into the production of meat. And by turning vegetarian, we would be able to have a huge impact on the emission of the gases that impact the ozone layer, and obviously addressing the issue of climate change at the global level. And last but not the least, after having taken an action at the level of, after having taken suitable action at their individual level, I think the individuals must get out, get involved with a larger group of similarly motivated individuals and in their communities, and take up a project near them that is close to their heart, and push for it till the end.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. I think that's a very good advice. Consumption, meat production definitely has its impact, and if not going completely vegetarian, at least reduction start with reducing their meat intake, right? I mean,
that's definitely yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's a great advice. Small steps go a long way, and individuals can take those small steps. Thank you very much. Radwan, again, I'm really impressed. You're just 18-year-olds. I think you are a role model in every way, right? What would your advice be to your fellow teenagers and young adults? Why should they care about this? And why is it important to be aware of the climate change and be part of it?
I think my advice to people my age or the young generation in general would be to remember how powerful we are. I mean, we are one of the few generations that have so many resources to use to make a difference. We have everything we need. All we need to do is take action. And our children will be the generation that will see probably the worst ripple effects of the decisions we take today. So I just want to tell everyone to think about every single decision we make today, how it's going to affect our children and the children of our children, because eventually we decide their fate.
Right. Thank you very much, Radwan. I think the last one to go is Pradeep. Pradeep, thank you very much for bringing this panel together. We started out this story with just you, but you suggested this, and it turned out really, really, really good. Tell me, like, where from here is your journey, and what is your advice?
Yeah, I have something interesting perspective, like how we need to address this issue. So
yes,
we need to see this as we need to take a farmer as a role model here, like the farmer's approach to make it clear. So suppose a farmer sees a tree which is unhealthy, he doesn't look at the branches and diagnose it. He will look at the roots, he will look at the roots to diagnose it. Similarly, this approach also, like we should not look at the branches of government and politicians run by corporations. Like we need to look at the roots. So in this climate change, we are the roots. So it is up to us to take care of our own planet. So this is the only home that we are left with. So that is where I'm inspired by how farmers diagnose a tree and how he's approaching it. Like even if we can take the role model of as a farmer and we think about this thing, like it will solve a lot of things. And we need to think like a global citizen. This is not an issue of one country or one group of people, like a clan. So all of us should actually think as a global citizen, and we need to act locally and think globally to solve this climate change issue. Like I'm very hopeful if we definitely keep people over profit and need over greed, we will definitely win over this. Like right now, what we are doing is only an error. Like it will become a mistake if we don't correct ourselves. So there is a hope that there are two, like recently I read a news in India, there are two villages in Andhra Pradesh completely turning off to renewable energy. And there is Bhutan, which is inspiring, very near to India. So there is a hope as well. So it's up to us, are we going to use that hope and move forward, or are we going to reduce our future generations' lifetime? That's what we need to take care. And like if anyone hearing this want to know more about this International Antarctic Expedition or what Sir Robert Swan and we as a 24T1 team are trying to do, you can always reach out to us from Sir Robert Swan Facebook page, or like from the website www.2041.com. Yeah, from there we can actually take it forward, because like together we can do so many things, but in a better way, like an individual. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with that positive message, we call an end to the show. It was nice talking to you all. Thank you for making out your time and providing some very, very great insights into the story. Thank you very much, all of you. Have a nice day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Vamsi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you, Vamsi. Thank you, another time.
Friends, if you liked today's show, please go to youtube.com/NRI Samay and click on the subscribe button. You will get notified every time we publish a new show. And you can also like us on our social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, and Google+.